I have no idea.
Oh, okay, so situation normal there as his vice chair. I just want to welcome everyone to this inaugural RADPAC Board Retreat. And I'm so excited about that. And if someone could mute Tom Hoffman's ears for just a minute, I'm also so excited that Eddie Smith now owes everybody a mimosa, not just me. So Tom, what I said, because I'm not afraid of jail, is that Eddie Smith now owes everybody a mimosa, not just me. Because we are asking you to join us at your Saturday brunch time. And I am so grateful for your combined energy and efforts in making this very first RADPAC Board Retreat happen. And I want to start by thanking Ted for the wonderful note pads that were circulated. And in case Tom is taking notes, I think they're below the bribery level. So because they're not in authentic crocodile or alligator. So thank you so much for thinking of us, Ted, and in keeping the energy going. And well in advance, although I'm likely to embarrass them further, and anyway, not everyone's on now, but embarrass them further when they present. Thank you so much for the people willing to present today. And right now, I think that's Tom and Ted. I don't think we have Stacy on this early, but yes, Mary, thank you for raising that, the personal note that was tucked inside. So if yours is still in plastic, like all of those journals that you subscribe, I didn't say that, but if yours is still in plastic, open it up. There is a personal note from Ted inside. So I'm just so excited about this. I think that we've got great energy. We certainly have our work cut out for us. And I am looking forward to every presentation we're having today, as well as updates on our gala, any sneak previews on March Madness, and just welcome everybody to present any ideas that you have. Legal or not, I can tell you that Tom will keep you in stride. So there's no worry about thinking outside of the box. And I'm not gonna be the person who puts us behind, Ted. So unless you want to cover things that I've left out, my welcome and great thanks is over. And Eddie Smith does owe everybody a mimosa for today's meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bello, and I appreciate everyone joining us. I mean, we have 15 out of 16, and Dr. McAdams is going to try to join us, but he's got some stuff going on. So this is, first of all, great turnout, very appreciative. One thing I think is really, really important to stress is that I think the perception is this is an educational opportunity for you all, which is true. I mean, that's kind of the main reason we're doing this. However, when I was talking with Stacy, who's a real good friend, she's going to be presenting later in this retreat. When she and I were going over this, I said, you know, we're going to get just as much out of this, meaning really more me and Eddie and Melody than as much as you guys will, because we like to think in DC, we know exactly what you guys are thinking all the time, and that you agree with every idea we have for solicitations and contributor recognition, all these types of things, but really we don't get a lot of chances to ask you guys for input. So I really, really want you to be very active in, we're gonna have some breakout sessions. I want you to be very active and just be very creative. Like Dr. Bello said, don't hesitate to just throw out ideas, because this is the vehicle and the forum for us where we learn as much as you guys will learn. You guys will learn some stuff for sure, but I think we are gonna be able to learn some stuff from you all too, which is just as important. So please keep that in mind. We will try to have some sessions where there's more interaction. Some will not have as much interaction because of the nature of the content. But Tom Hoffman, many of you know, is in our legal department. I would say Tom and I talk probably more than he cares to to have us talk per week. Every week it seems like with something that I'm trying to push the envelope on, and he does his due diligence and his job appropriately to make sure that I stay out of trouble, that Dr. Scanlon stays out of trouble as our treasurer. So Tom's going to go over some stuff along with me as far as legal do's and don'ts. This is a really good foundational session for us as we go into the more advanced sessions later in the retreat. So I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully everyone can see it. Can I just get like a nod or a thumbs up?
Yeah, good
Okay,
job.
good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. All right, legal do's and don'ts. We don't want handcuffs, even though most of these are civil penalties. So I'm going to kick it off to start with Tom.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Dr. Bello, Dr. Fleischon, board members and staff colleagues. I appreciate your passion and advocacy for quality patient care. Alphabet soup is unfortunately the trade inside the Beltway. That is the difference between ACRA and ACR is one I wanted to emphasize. You as members belong to this legal creature called the American College of Radiology Association. Why the extra letter at the end after ACR? Because it's the law. For decades, the Internal Revenue Service, our friends at the IRS, have prohibited 501c3 charitable, scientific, and educational organizations such as the college from engaging in anything called partisan political activity. That means at most the college could hold a nonpartisan event such as Get Out the Vote Drive, and that's it. Naturally, a serious impediment to engaging meaningfully on Capitol Hill and throughout states with chapters. So well, actually in the late 90s, right as I joined the college in 97, at that point, I think Ron Evans was the chair, along with John Curry, the former executive director who preceded Harvey Neiman. The leaders founded something called the Radiology Advocacy Alliance, a separate tax-exempt organization that was in the right bucket for do politics. A few years later, because of brand confusion and naturally a desire to link it better with the college, name-wise, the ACRA Council approved creating rather, the ACR Association. Under the tax laws, a 501c6 organization is known as a business league or membership organization that is connected to and sponsors RADPAC. You all are members of ACR Association. Your practices, your departments pay dues to the ACR Association, for which we're very grateful. The ACRA, under federal law, may hold events, political events, such as events with members of Congress, incumbents as well as candidates. It may solicit and contribute funds with no legal limitations, such as the college would. Next slide, please, Ted. In the vein of advocacy, some issues have surfaced recently, and I appreciate Dr. Bello raising a couple of these at the recent board meeting during RSNA. Can you, as a board member and your colleagues, pitch the virtues of RADPAC to anyone who is not an ACRA member, such as in a large practice? We talked at the board meeting a few months ago. Dr. Bello raised, and a couple of others, Envision or Rad Partners and other large corporately owned through radiologists group practices. What can you say about RADPAC? You certainly can and should consider exhorting them to join ACRA and therefore contribute and play in RADPAC. However, legally you have to avoid soliciting a non-member because she or he is outside of what's known under the law as the restricted class. When Ted worked at the Federal Election Commission years ago, he, as a government employee there, had to monitor what organizations did, PACs included, when they interacted with people outside the restricted class. And these are members as well as on the staff level, like Ted, Melody, Ed, and I. Our members are rather the executive administrative personnel. Technically, we could be solicited for contributions as well as you as members. So you cannot solicit non-members. exhort them, encourage them, plead with them even to join ACR Association and therefore contribute to RADPAC and be involved that way. What about at your chapter and group meetings, playing videos that encourage and highlight RADPAC? You have to draw a line carefully there too. Adjourn the meeting because that meeting may have non-ACRA members, and then convene a separate session and go to town on RADPAC and related PAC activities. Please make sure during the latter session, the PAC session, to wear your RADPAC hat. So Dr. Bello was chair of the RADPAC board rather than as vice chair of the college or in leadership, say with the New York State Radiological Society. That distinction matters, legally speaking, just in case, and Ted knows this as well as anyone, it's a small town and we wouldn't want someone raising questions with a member of a government agency like the Federal Election Commission, the IRS, or even on a state level. So playing RADPAC videos, talking about RADPAC after the official meeting adjourns fine in a separate session. And what about social media? Many colleagues such as Amy and Chris, Kimberly are leaders in this area, as well as Jackie and Howard. It is absolutely permissible and legal to go ahead and tweet, retweet, like, post anything about RADPAC on your own personal pages. Now, RADPAC may retweet or like your own personal posts. The college, of course, cannot do that under the tax exempt restrictions that the IRS set. So with social media, we've been thoughtful to try to cultivate the relationships properly through the legal channels such as RADPAC. We do have, it gets, the challenge here for social media purposes is when we have ACR RFS and ACR YPS. Those are connected with the college as a C3 organization. So we've got to shift the social media attention and communication to RADPAC and make sure that things flow through RADPAC. Next slide, please, Ted. All right, and finally, before I kick it back to my colleague, Mr. Burns, good news that Ted has worked closely with our colleague in ACR Chapter Services, Katie Kuhn, to have RADPAC have a voice and a face in the chapter executive update. This will happen under the auspices of the ACRA. So that means that you'll hear on a grassroots chapter by chapter level about what RADPAC's up to for members. This will help enhance the relationships that you continue to grow in your day-to-day activities as RADPAC leaders. And finally, and Dr. Bello noted this, the logo behind me is ACR. I am an ACR employee, such as just as Ted, Melody, and Ed are. ACRA leases us, so there's a artificial light next to the ACR in my background. But as a member of legal, I am here to assist you, work with you. Please reach out anytime by email or phone. Happy to continue to brainstorm and work with you. And with that, Ted, should we hold questions until after you're finished?
Yeah, if that's okay with everyone, I think it'll be easier to do that. And one thing I want to go back to this slide with social media, and I appreciate Tom mentioning this because this is a question that comes up pretty regularly, either myself to Tom or some of our own members on the board to Tom or to me directly. We are one of the very, very few PACs that actually have a Twitter account. In fact, when I've gone to Public Affairs Council, which is a big resource for a lot of PACs, no one has social media accounts because what happened on January 6th and people are quick to throw RADPAC under the bus. People are tweeting stuff about RADPAC who aren't even radiologists, but they're maybe hard leaning Democrats, and they're just trying to get a rise out of us or whatever it may be. It makes you very vulnerable and very susceptible to a lot of attacks by a lot of people. But I do agree, especially when it's like our reception, RSNA, and some of these other events and March Chapter Challenge, it has been a great vehicle for us. And so as long as we walk that right line of being in compliance with FEC law and not compromising our exempt organization status that Tom has mentioned, it's a great resource for us, but it's something that is very unusual for most PACs because they don't want to put themselves out there as we have. So this is kind of a process behind the scenes. And do you want to answer questions or ask questions now? Go ahead, you can. I see we have a hand up.
Well, no, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. No, please ask away.
Well, so as specifically for us as board members of RADPAC,
Mhm.
are we somehow limited further in any of this, or it doesn't necessarily carry any more weight? We can still basically be classified as regular radiologists. I just want to make sure of that. In our communications, in our advocacy efforts on behalf of RADPAC.
Dr. Zaidi, I appreciate the question. And the answer is you're not constrained to communicate with your radiologist peers, but the caution is you may not realize right away whether they are ACRA members. So to the extent you can confirm that, great, please contact Ted, Melody, or even me in legal, and we'll help you make sure that you're speaking to members in that restricted or permissible class. So if you're confident that you're dealing with someone who is an ACRA member, then communications can include RADPAC. I hope that helps.
Let's say if we don't actively solicit non-ACRA members, but non-members end up contributing. I mean, are we actually saying that somehow they can't even contribute and we have to track it down and return the money or something? I just want to make it clear without getting into the weeds too much, but I guess.
Right. Non-members technically may contribute to RADPAC, and Ted.
Right. That's correct. You can't solicit a non-member to give. A non-member can give. The one distinction, which is really often overlooked, and it was actually a point of contention for a lot of folks internally at the Federal Election Commission when I was there, is what constitutes a solicitation. So in other words, if you went to a non-member and said, hey, as a non-member, I can't solicit you, because you're a non-member, I can't solicit you to give to the PAC, but you can give to the PAC without me soliciting to you. That in and of itself is a solicitation, because you basically just solicited them. So you have to kind of, again, walk that fine line. But if someone just said, hey, look, I know, for instance, with you, RP is doing a big thing. I'm not a member of the college, but I see that RP is really being supportive of RADPAC. RADPAC's doing good stuff. I'm just going to write a check to RADPAC because they've heard about it. That's completely permissible. And we don't have to return that at all. It's just, and quite honestly, I'll give you a great example. Bo Trotter, who is big with RBMA, he's a chapter executive, he's a practice administrator, all these things. He's not a radiologist. He's contributed to RADPAC for probably each of the last 5 years. But he does it just because he and I have a relationship, and he knows Ted, RADPAC, and they're doing good stuff. But I've never once asked him for anything, but he does it every year. And of course, we happily accept it, so.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Dr. Ortiz, please.
So I was just wondering, so if, for instance, March is chapter challenge, so if I just send a mass email to my group, all the radiologists in my group, and say, hey, this chapter challenge is going on, here's why I'm involved with RADPAC, I think our group members should contribute. I don't know if 100% of my radiologists are ACR members, or ACRA members. Is that a legal communication or no?
The trick there is, as you noted, some members may not be ACRA members and therefore not in the restricted class. For that reason, you should contact us and we can confirm their membership status, or you can work with your business manager, practice administrator, or CEO even to do that. And it's better safe than sorry. I just, as Ted's noted and Dr. Fleischman in the chat, you can provide objective factual information about RADPAC, which is different from a solicitation or an ask. And that's a fine line that we've walked for several years in the ACR bulletin and the ACR publications. Dr. Scanlon, I wish I were kidding, but it would be very devastating for the college as the 501c3 organization to have its tax exempt status risked by somehow facilitating that intervention or solicitation. So we've got to keep working through the ACRA. This is a challenge that Dr. Ortiz and I have discussed recently when he wore his YPS RADPAC liaison hat and writing in an ACR publication. We're trying to find a companion ACRA publication so he can speak more openly and more in a more advocacy manner about RADPAC.
Okay, I'm gonna, unless there's any other questions, I want to get rolling here. I don't want to fall too far behind, and we're doing relatively well so far with our agenda here. So this is a inside the look as to our internal process and what we do. So the Federal Election Commission, which we refer to as the FEC, enforces campaign finance law. How often we file, what we file, is all open to the public. It's publicly accessible information. Dr. Scanlon has been the RADPAC treasurer for a while, and she's kind of the one held accountable, if you will, if there are any problems or issues that were of the significant nature. We file on a monthly basis. There are a few exceptions, particularly in the election year before the general election. The filing schedule gets a little bit more complicated and detailed. And then also with regard to what's called independent expenditures, and we'll get into that later in the retreat. But we report all receipts, all disbursements, and we do that each month. And then that gets signed off by Tom Hoffman in legal, and then it goes to Dr. Scanlon. She reviews and approves, and then we submit it. Now, with receipts and disbursements, we have to report pretty much an itemized receipt once a contribution goes over $200 in that calendar year. So if you only give one time for $10, you'll be unitemized. We still have to collect your information in the event that you choose to give more later that year and go over that $200 threshold. I think that, despite my little slide there with the handcuffs, 90% of the time, if there's any kind of penalty, it's a civil penalty, it's a fine. Really important that we go through the amendment process and we change information that we identified as being off. If maybe something doesn't reconcile with our accounting department, if there's a change with the accounting department, if it was soft money versus hard or vice versa. Sometimes the Federal Election Commission will send us a letter and say, hey, we have identified in your report that you're off by 2 cents and maybe we missed it. So we will have to file an amendment. If we were to ask for a refund, which we've never really done, but if we said, hey, we want a check back, a contribution back from a campaign, or anything like that, then we would have to amend all of the reports from that time that original contribution was made to current day. So there is a very detailed process involved in all of this, and it's something that we take obviously very seriously, and we monitor it very, very closely. And then this is kind of the best way that I can give you guidance as to what you need to be aware of when you're making your solicitations, whether it's by email or even in verbal communications to folks. Again, we have to report anything over 200, but there are limits on how much someone can give. We don't have the problem. We've never had the problem where someone wanted to give more than $5,000 as an individual, but that is the max amount that someone can contribute to RADPAC in the calendar year. We have, I believe, about 13 or so folks that give in the range of 2,500 to 5,000. We've had a couple people who would do 5,000, but never more. And if you're a federal government contractor, foreign national, you're prohibited from making a contribution. This is an issue that comes up oftentimes if you're, at the VA or you're at some sort of institution that has some sort of connection to the government. That's a big issue, and that we've had to be very careful of in the past with soliciting folks in those work environments. This is a very, very important, probably one of the most important bullet points on the slide, and that is contributions are not deductible. It's not considered quote unquote charitable. And it's not uncommon for us to get several people who will ask in the course of January, February, or March, hey, can I get a receipt for my contribution from last year? And I always think it's a little suspicious because I'm like, you can't write this off, right? Because I know tax season's coming up. And as a result of this, I really want us to change the dialogue that we don't use the word donation. We don't use the word donor or donate if we can help it. Because to me, when I hear donate, I think of you're making kind of a charitable donation. I think we really start to focus more on contributions made, contributors, because that doesn't have the same connotation of the charitable giving. I just think it helps ease a lot of potential confusion for folks. So that's something I really want as a board, that we really start to focus our language change to make it more contributor as opposed to donor. And then this is also super big issue within, I think, particularly the residency programs, the younger radiologists, the RFS, the YPS. There's oftentimes pressure, and it's finding that right balance of asking someone to give while making them not feel like they have to give. I mean, making a contribution by law to a PAC is voluntary. And there should never be any sense of, well, if I don't give and I'm the only one in my program who doesn't give, then I'm going to get all the bad schedule for in my program. Or, you know, I'm in private practice and I'm not going to be able to be partner track eligible because I'm not doing what everyone else in the practice is doing by contributing to RADPAC. So you cannot have any kind of reprisal, whether it's financial or otherwise. And so again, we have to find that right balance of aggressively fundraising while not being kind of like a bully. And so I think Dr. Scanlon and Dr. Bello, you two, I like to call you guys out as being our kind of like bulldogs when it comes to fundraising, and you need that type of mentality and personality to raise money, and we're very appreciative of you guys doing it like that. And you guys have also been very good about not going over that line. But I think it is something we just have to always have in the back of our mind, because some people may feel more sensitive about it being asked than others. And so, especially in this environment, in this climate, we know that, you know, it's a very politically divisive environment, and people are just a lot more attuned to all of what's happening and more sensitive now than ever before.
Dr. Fleischer noted aptly that in academic medical centers, the opposite attitude often applies, that there's particular pressure not to solicit for political contributions because of perceived stigma, whether or not it relates to the current political climate. So
Yeah,
thanks, Dr. Fleischer.
Yeah, I've been to programs where I've been asked to speak, but I can't mention RADPAC. And I'm like, well, why am I being asked to speak? But, you know, you work around it. But it is an academic cultural thing, probably more than in private practice, but it's just something to keep in mind. This chart is pretty important. We get this question a lot, hard money versus soft money. I'm not going to belabor into this too long, but pretty much hard money is money from individuals. There's a bunch of different ways it can come from individuals. For soft money, we associate soft money typically as corporate money. We can still take corporate money, it's just used differently. But, you know, hard money is always our preference, but soft money is certainly better than nothing. And so, you know, as we're doing our solicitation process, we always focus on the, because we use that to give directly to the campaigns for members of Congress and candidates. We cannot do that with soft money. But if we have soft money at our disposal, there are things we can do to make us very effective with our role in the process of being a player politically. And it's something that I think when Stacy has her part of the retreat presentation where she's going to talk about making the pitch, she's going to talk a little bit about how, when she was with orthopedic surgeons, how they were able to raise a very significant amount of money and how effective that can be.
Excuse me, Dr. Bello, did you have a question or a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to make 3 quick points, and one is to point out to everybody how fortunate we are that Ted Burns used to be with the FEC, because this is incredibly important to keeping us on the straight and narrow. Secondly, same thing goes for Tom Hoffman, though not ever employed, to the best of my knowledge, by the FEC. I just want to bring out a very practical example, and I don't mind making a negative poster child out of myself. During a recent board meeting, I was getting I had done my RADPAC report during the correct portion of the meeting where ACR was adjourned and now it was ACRA. And then in the chat throughout the meeting, I said, remember Super Bowl, energy is going now for RADPAC. It's a $25 contribution. Let's all add a 0. And in order to do that, I did not sit there and type in everybody's name individually. I simply used our ACR staff persons list of BOC CSC members and hit send. Now, Tom thankfully pointed out to me later, and I am not speaking to you from jail, I'm at home, that is best not to do using an ACR vehicle. So it can be as simple as that. If some of you are on an appropriateness criteria panel and you say, you know what, I'm just going to hit that group at large and give them my RADPAC spiel, don't do that. There's nothing wrong with you typing in Jim Smith and Jane Doe and Paul Evans separately from that same list, but you can't just hit the ACR list of your panel members and do that. So that's the second point. And lastly, the third point, on the points raised by Howard in the chat and others, especially Tom, in the discussion about